Hello out there. I'm Ralph from Moana Nursery, and I'm pleased to have this opportunity to show you how to winterize your lawn sprinkler and shrub irrigation system for this coming winter. And of course, turn it back on again in the springtime. At this point, you may be wondering, why do I care about winterizing? The reason you care about winterizing is that at some point, if you don't, things are going to freeze and break inevitably, and it'll end up costing you time and money. For instance, this device right here, the vacuum pressure breaker, alone is worth over $150. To help visualize this preparation, I'd like to spend a few minutes looking at the major portions of the typical Moana irrigation system, one that would be found in your yard. There are four major parts to the irrigation control system. The first one is in this green box that I'm taking the lid off of. Inside are the control valves for both the sprinkler lines and the drip lines. And they are, of course, the ones that provide direction to where the water is supposed to go. Now let's go locate the irrigation supply valve and the first drain valve. That's the second major part of winterization. Clustered together here is this group of three pipes protruding from the ground near the green box. One of them may have a white cap on it instead of a black cap like this one does. It houses the main house water supply valve. The other two valves will always have a black cap on them, as you see here. The third major part of the system is called the pressure vacuum breaker. This device here. It is both a critical part of the system as well as being required by building codes, and for good reason. Your health is involved. The pressure vacuum breaker is the device that stops the irrigation water, some of which may already now be contaminated with fertilizers and other ground detritus, from being drawn by suction back into your clean water supply, thereby contaminating your cooking and drinking water and your bathing water. The last major component of the system is the electrical controller, which is located in the garage. This is it. We'll look at its simple operation for winterizing a little bit later. Having visually identified the major parts of the system, let's now look at the simple process of winterizing the system. Winterizing essentially means draining all the water from those parts exposed to freezing. As we've mentioned before, that's a good thing, and is typically done the first week of November when night temperatures routinely fall to 28 degrees Fahrenheit or lower. During the discussion of the winterizing process, we will not only refer again to the actual parts of the system that we've seen, we will also refer to this diagram. As you can see, the diagram allows us to pretend that we can look inside the ground to see how the three water-carrying parts of the system are connected to each other. For clarity, the parts are spread out in a straight line of water flow from left to right. In reality, it is more like a bowl of spaghetti. With a bit of analysis, you can see that the purpose of these valves, the irrigation supply valve, the first manual drain valve, the various valves comprising the pressure vacuum breaker, and the second manual drain valve, allow water, with the aid of gravity, to drain completely from the system. So we'll start the winterizing process with the irrigation supply valve. As we mentioned before, when looking at the major components of the system, these three pipes contain the valves that amongst them control the water flow for your entire home and irrigation system. We don't need to operate or shut off the house water supply valve in order to winterize the irrigation system, but it's important for you to know where it is, because you may have occasion to want to be able to shut off the house supply and not turn off the irrigation supply. The first valve manipulations that we do as part of the winterization is to shut off the irrigation supply valve, which is located right next to the house supply valve. And we do that by putting the key on top of an X-head valve down below, and we turn it clockwise all the way until it is firmly seated. The next valve that we manipulate is the first drain valve. Now, it's the same kind of valve in that it has an X-head, but instead of the PVC pipe running through it, it has this black L-shaped elbow piece. and its purpose is to drain into the ground, which means we're going to open that valve, and we do that by using the key but turning counterclockwise all the way. It's good to verify that you're looking at the correct valve before you start doing this, and so I would recommend to you that again you look at the head and the black elbow-shaped piece. You may need a flashlight to look down inside. Having done that, water will then drain out of the first section of piping in the system. Next in the winterizing sequence is the pressure vacuum breaker. There's two blue-handled valves as you see here, and they have to be turned from their current inline position with their pipe to a 45-degree position, like that. The last remaining step is to open the two test cocks. Visible on each side of them is a small screw ball valve. Notice that the screw slot for that ball valve in each case is vertical. We just simply use a large blade, flat blade screwdriver and turn them so that they are horizontal. Having completed these settings of the ball valve handles and the test cocks, the pressure vacuum breaker is set for winter by allowing gravity to drain all of its chambers. Our last valve for winterizing the system is the second drain valve, and it's located here in the green box, pointing to it with the key. And by using the key, we open it completely by turning the valve handle counterclockwise all the way, just as we did for the first drain valve. The water now flows out from this last section of pipe into the ground. The last step in the winterization process is to turn off the electrical controller that we saw earlier. So let's take a closer look at this controller located in the garage. If your controller has a cover like this one does, just simply open it and notice the prominent dial in the center. It's currently set to the auto position, and if we turn it to off, we have accomplished our task. One side piece of information about your controller. As you may know, the electrical power has been known to fail from time to time. So you might ask if the controller forgets what it is supposed to do when the power fails. The good news is that the controller has a rechargeable backup battery so that it doesn't forget. Well, having turned the main controller switch to off, we have completed the winterizing process. The process for re-energizing the system in the spring is essentially the reverse of what we have done to winterize, with the exception of turning on the controller, which remains the last step in the springtime. Springtime re-energizing occurs generally in the middle of March, when daytime temperatures reach 40 degrees Fahrenheit and higher. One last point about the irrigation system that we have not yet discussed is the control valve, also in the green box here. This is for the drip line. Right now it is just stubbed off over here. To take most effective advantage of this line, plan to visit either of the two Moana Nursery locations, where knowledgeable salespeople can help you with your decisions about the appropriate plants to use and their effects, and then what they would require in the way of the drip system specifics. The emitters come in all sizes and shapes, and without a little bit of help and knowledge, that would be a tough decision to make. So do take advantage of that. It's free. I know we've covered quite a bit of information in a short period of time, but we're not going to leave you adrift. We have several pieces of handout information that we were going to provide for every new homeowner, and briefly they are, first and foremost, the watering schedule from the Truckee Meadows Water Authority, and that includes both the schedule, of which they're pretty picky about, and also some good watering tips. The second item, from Western Turf, the supplier of the turf that is now planted in your new yard, has some additional lawn care tips, and they will help you maintain a beautiful green lawn. The third item is the diagram we've been working with to explain how the system works all along, except this version has some additional information. It has summarized the 5 steps to winterize the system, and then the 5 steps to re-energize the system in the springtime. The next item is the operating manual for the sprinkler control system. And of course, you're not going to have to do too much with that, as we've already covered, except you may want to change the duration of some of the sprinkler times. And last, we have a DVD copy of this presentation for your future reference and use. When we started, I pointed out that there are only a few basic purposes for the system, and they are to properly water your lawn and your shrubs, to keep dirty water from getting back into your clean water, and finally to protect the system from freezing in the winter. If you keep these basic purposes in mind and use the information that we've provided to you, you should have no trouble maintaining a beautiful Moana lawn and garden. Thank you for letting me spend the time with you, giving you this information.